All right, so in this tutorial, we're going to walk through the rock, paper, scissors project. What this project is meant to do is to help you understand logical operators in Python and help you understand how to use those in order to create a real game. So we're going to do a couple of things here. First, we're going to try to get our computer's choice from the choices rock, paper, scissors, because that's how this game works. And so in order to do that, we're going to use the random function like we've done before. So we need to import random into our project. And then we're going to create a list of rock, paper, and scissors. And I'm labeling this variable choice underscore list. Now, in order to get a random element from this variable, we're going to use one of the random functions, and this is random.choice. Random.choice will take a list as its parameter, and it'll choose one element from that list and output that into a variable. So I'm setting the variable comp, which will be our computer's choice, to a random choice from the list of rock, paper, scissors. Okay. So that takes care of our computer. Now we want to get our user's choice. And we'll do this using the method that we've used before to ask users for their input, and that's the raw input method. And so we're going to ask the user to choose between rock, paper, or scissors. Now I'm putting rock, paper, and scissors in lowercase and putting them in quotes so that the user knows that that's what they're supposed to type in when they're asked for that choice. So what this will do is it'll prompt the user on the screen for their choice, and it'll store the user's input in the user variable. Now, we need to compare the computer's choice to the user's choice and see who won the game. And we're going to do this with some if, elif, and else statements. So if the user is equivalent to the computer, this would mean that the user chooses rock and the computer chooses rock, for example. We're going to print computer chose plus the variable that we have stored for comp, and you chose plus the variable that we have stored for user, colon, you tied. So in this case, computer and user have tied. We're not going to keep score at this point, but neither one of them would win the game at this point. So then we're going to need an elif statement. And this elif statement is going to test a few different conditions. Now, when you think about your game, think about what the ultimate condition you want is. So for example, in this game, we really have three end results. Either the user and the computer tie, the user beats the computer, or the computer beats the user. So our first statement, the if statement, handles that tie result. This next statement will handle one of those other two results. So we're going to handle whether the user wins first, and we're going to test for all of the conditions of the user winning. So if the user equals rock and comp equals scissors, well, that means that the user won the game. But there are a few other conditions where the user might win. Let's say if the user chooses scissors and the computer chooses paper, or if the user chooses paper and the computer chooses rock. So we can put all of these into this elif statement and test for each of them, because if any of them are true, then the user won the game. So we do this by using the OR logical operator. So I'm going to add another statement using OR if the user picks scissors and the computer equals paper. So, and then we'll add the final one if the user chooses paper and the computer chooses rock. So these are all of the cases with rock, paper, and scissors where the user would win the game. And so we're going to print out computer chose what they chose, you chose what you chose, you win for our user. Now our last elif statement will handle the case where the computer wins the game. And so we're going to basically set this up just like the elif statement that we just made. And in this case, print out the computer chose whatever they chose and they lose. And then if something else happens, we're going to print error. When we can handle error correction later on, this is useful for us a little bit later. So, for example, if the user were to type in something random or spell something wrong, it'll print error and just end the game. So let's run it and see how this goes. If I run it, it asks me to choose rock, paper, or scissors. I'm going to choose paper. And it says the computer chose paper and you chose paper. You tied. So this was level 1 of the rock, paper, scissors challenge. But in the later levels, I asked you to expand on it. And there were 2 ways I asked you to expand. The first way was to keep track of who wins and do a best 2 out of 3. And then the second was to do a rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, where you add conditions to the rock, paper, scissors project. Now, to do rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, all you need to do is test for more things in your ELIF statements. You're still only going to need these 3 statements, but you'll have more, I believe 6 more possible right answers. So that's pretty easy. It just takes a little bit more legwork on your part. In order to keep track of how many wins the player has had and the computer has had, we're going to have to do a few different things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set some variables, and we're going to initialize those variables at 0. A variable for the number of wins the computer has had and a variable for the number of wins that the user has had. Then we want to set up a while loop. Now, you'll remember this from our Guess the Number game in the last tutorial. The while loop is our game loop, and so we want to keep the game going as long as the conditions that we have in the while loop are met. So in this case, we want to do best 2 out of 3. So if the computer's number of wins are less than 2 and the user's number of wins are less than 2, then nobody has won best 2 out of 3 yet. And so we should keep the loop going and ask for user input again. Now, in order for our the rest of our program to be in that while loop, remember we have to indent. So we're going to indent the rest of the program here. And that puts this within the while loop. And so every time the loop runs, it will run the code that's within the loop. Okay, so now the problem that we have right now is if we run this, it's pretty much going to run forever. And that's because we are not really keeping track with our variables of whether or not the user or the computer's won. So we need to add a couple of statements in here to do that. So if the user wins, we're going to add 1 to our user wins variable. And we do this on line 17 here with user wins equals user wins plus 1. If the computer wins, we're going to do the same on line 20. Computer wins equals computer wins plus 1. And then we have to have some way of printing that out to our user. And so we're going to tell our user how many wins they have and how many wins the computer has. And so in this case, you've won, and then we take user wins and we coerce it into a string, and we add that into our string here. And then the computer has won how many wins the computer has had. All right, so this pretty much completes our game. But I want to add a little bit more code right at the end of the game to print out to the user who the ultimate winner was, whether the user won or the user lost. And so outside of our while statement, remember this won't be evaluated until after we jump out of that game loop, we're going to add an if-elif statement. If the computer wins are greater than the user wins, print out to the user, you lose. Elif, the user wins are greater than the computer wins, print out to the user, you win. And that's it as far as this program goes. Let's run it and you'll see what happens. So I'm going to choose rock. Computer chose scissors. I won. I've won 1 game. The computer has won 0 games. I'm going to choose rock again. Oh, we tied. So now you notice we did not increment the number of games won. We're still tied. All right, let's keep going. Man, we keep tying. All right, let's see. Computer is reading my mind. Oh, I lost that one. Okay, so it's 1 and 1. Who's going to win? I lost. All right, well, there you go. That is a tutorial for a simple rock, paper, scissors game. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, please ask them in the Coding Help Forum.